welcome to my three guests, Zhao Hai, Nason, and Professor Quelch, for joining us from different parts of the world. We'll be joined by Professor Mahboubi in just a moment. Let me go to Zhao Hai first, and welcome on the show. So first of all, we're hearing some encouraging indication from the United States side, at least that they want to manage the risks so that the competition doesn't veer into conflict. And yet we are hearing, for instance, the United States leading an alliance, leading its junior partners in a coordinated attempt to put pressure on China, basically leading the G7 to put pressure on China in terms of EV vehicle imports and imports of other high energy segments. How do you square these two, what they say and what they're doing? And these tariffs basically came days after Sullivan lands in Beijing.
Well, that has been the U.S. strategy. Particularly, this is coming from Mr. Sullivan himself. I think the U.S. is executing this parallel strategy. On the one hand, trying to maintain the guardrail, making sure that the crisis does not getting out of hands, and making sure that the competition does not veer into some kind of escalating conflict. But at the same time, the U.S. is escalating on other part of the bilateral relationship, particularly trade, technology, and regional alliances. So building up these alliances, reminding people of the Cold War strategy. And I think the U.S. cannot going further and further down this path, because there's this built-in inconsistency with the U.S. strategy. You cannot maintain or define this bilateral relationship, most important in this century, as competition without more areas of competition, but at the same time trying to prevent down the road any conflict or confrontation. So that's why I think this meeting is critically important, just like many meetings before this one, that there are continuing dialogue, and Chinese side wanted to make sure that this strategy is not working, and the U.S. needs to find a rational strategy. And also, this strategy shouldn't be impacted by domestic politics. As we know, right now, the U.S. Election is going on, and both sides want to show tough sides on China. And that strategy, if impacted or influenced by domestic politics, is even getting more complicated and more likely to go into an escalating confrontation between two sides.
Professor Quelch, let me go to you here. As I said in the first half of this program, the United States senior administration official says we're very clear-eyed about the threat that the PRC poses to the international order, and we expect that to be the case for the foreseeable future. Our strategy is designed to meet that challenge. So basically, describing the nature of this relationship, the United States continues, at least overtly, to describe China as a threat. How can you genuinely hope to manage this relationship when you are basically smearing the other side?
It's not a productive word to use in this context. As your previous guest indicated, the rhetoric in the current political climate is abnormally high, even by U.S. standards. I think we should take comfort in the fact that Mr. Sullivan, who got off to a very rocky start in early 2021 in Alaska. The first meeting that he was in charge of was pretty difficult, but he has recouped. He has met in Vienna, he's met in Malta, he's met in Bangkok, and now come to China. And I think also if the Vice President Harris were to win the election, there's a chance that Mr. Sullivan might continue in his position. So I would not dismiss the administration in Washington as being a lame duck administration. I suspect that there might be considerable continuity. And we have, since the excellent meeting between President Xi and President Biden in November of last year, had a much more thorough resuscitation of dialogue on 20 different dialogue mechanisms. And while there are obviously significant differences of opinion between the two sides, I don't think that anything has happened that has been a threat, if I can use that word again, to peaceful coexistence. In fact, military to military communication has greatly increased, which is to the benefit of everyone. And on many, many other points, there is considerable progress. You know, in my own small world, people-to-people exchanges between universities in China and the U.S. have greatly increased this summer. We had 70 students come from Duke University to Jiangsu province, for example. All of this is very positive. If someone uses the word threat, it's not productive, but that's not, I think, what really defines the excellent progress in communications that is occurring.
I do want to follow up, Professor Quelch, and I'm very happy to see the encouraging signs. But how do you look at the measures that really the United States and Mr. Sullivan, he was speaking in Canada, right? Just days before he makes the visit to China, that the United States needs to lead this coordinated alliance, basically, among the G7 to make sure that China does not get that China, for instance, Chinese EVs are not entering the markets in North America or possibly in other parts of the world, so that there is no national security concern. When you compare what is being said and what is being done, how genuine are the Americans in terms of really managing this relationship?
I think on this specific issue, they're making a mistake, because ultimately American consumers are looking for value-priced products of high quality. And this is what China has delivered successfully, not just to the United States, but to the world economy by being the factory of the world for the last 30 years. And I think it's a mistake to prevent American consumers from having the opportunity to choose to purchase a Chinese EV if they wish. And yes, there may be a possibility of monitoring of those vehicles, but that can easily be handled through negotiation. So I'm really a free market person by nature and by instinct, and I believe in consumer choice, and that consumers around the world deserve to have the best possible choices available to them, no matter what the source of those products or services happen to be. So I am on the record as saying that I think this particular policy is ill-advised and not in the interests of American consumers.
Professor Mahboubi, what is your take of the effectiveness so far of this channel of strategic communication, which was designed in Bali by the two presidents to put a floor to bilateral ties? Do you think it has been somewhat successful? What still needs to be done? Are we on the same page in terms of fundamentals, meaning, of course, in China's term, the perception of China?
From my perspective, it's a remarkably successful channel. I think it's important to remember that Jake Sullivan and Wang Yi met back in May 2023, just a few months after the balloon incident, which was probably one of the lowest moments in the U.S. China relationship during the Biden administration. And they've met now 5 times in 18 months. I think in many, many respects, this channel has shown itself to be very effective in stabilizing the relationship, even while obviously there's strategic competition between the two countries, and there are steps that both countries are taking to solidify that competition. I think that's just a reality that we need to get used to. But meanwhile, this channel has really done a lot, I think, functionally to lower the temperature in the U.S. China relationship. And in that sense, I think we could take this 5th and probably last meeting directly between Jake Sullivan and Wang Yi as a valedictory for what has really been in my view, a very, very effective channel in a very difficult period of time.
What do you expect to come out of this round of talks? Because so far we don't have much information about specifically what have been talked about. And if you look at what has been happening in terms of U.S. policy, it seems that the U.S. has been doubling down on tariffs on China, on the kind of perception in terms of rhetoric, definitely. So what can we possibly expect to come out of this meeting? Just another handshake and okay, to breathe the air of Beijing, have some Chinese food, but what else can we touch on tangibly?
Nothing wrong with Chinese food, so that's always a positive thing. But seriously, I think obviously this is the last months of the Biden administration. No matter who wins the next election, it will be a different president who takes power in the United States in January. And I think that the Biden and Xi relationship has been one that has structured this particular approach of both sides understanding that there's strategic competition, but trying to maintain some degree of stability nonetheless. And so I see this meeting as kind of, a bow tie on that approach. All the different steps, all the different dialogues that they've reinvigorated over the last couple of years, and in particular the last 18 months, all the stabilization steps that they've taken, even in the context of strategic competition. I think this meeting is about solidifying that and leaving that as the legacy for the next president to build on, or otherwise, depending on whether it is going to be a President Harris or a President Trump once again.
Mr. Zhao, sorry, very little time left for you, but in case there is a total shift of administration that President Trump wins the White House, will such interaction between China and between the National Security Advisor and Mr. Wang Yi and whoever succeeds him, will it still be useful? Will it still continue? What's the point of stepping up the talks now?
First of all, we don't know what's going to happen, particularly if there's a switch of administration. It's very hard to say whether or not there's going to be a continuation of the current mechanism. And my suspicion is that the new administration will cut off and probably try and find another channel. And the current visit...
You mean in case Trump wins the White House?
Yes, exactly. And the current visit by National Security Advisor Sullivan, I think there's one key purpose here, which is to make sure that the remaining months before and after the U.S. election, the U.S. side wanted to maintain strategic stability between the two countries so that no incident could happen that will impact or influence the outcome of the U.S. election. And right now, I think China issue is not on the top priority or top of the list in the U.S. domestic politics. But if something flash out, if something happened across Taiwan Strait or South China Sea or whatever, that could change the game. So I think one of the major things here is to talk about this.
But Trump has also said that he kind of wants to have a good relationship with China, so we don't know really, Mr. Zhao.
Well, Trump is talking about having a good relationship with President Xi, but if you look at his last administration, overall, I don't think that direction of the bilateral relationship is heading in the right direction.
All right. Well, we will certainly keep a close watch on the situation. Many thanks to my guests, Zhao Hai, John Quelch, and Nason Mabubi.